It's Thursday, January 19th, and this is now on H&N.
To watch the best of the best guys in the world challenge one of the most challenging waves in the world, Waimea.
The Eddy is back on. The Big Wave Surf Contest will run on Sunday.
Alec Baldwin faces charges of involuntary manslaughter for a fatal movie set shooting. I'm Michael George with the actor's response and what's ahead in the criminal case.
Developing news from D.C. The U.S. Treasury buys some time for Biden and the GOP to reach a debt limit deal.
Let's start paying this debt off and make sure the future generation has as many opportunities as we do.
All these stories, plus, have you looked outside today at all that fog building up? We've got your first alert to when it will be clearing out, coming up on This Is Now. Good afternoon. Thank you for watching. This is Now. You got Dylan and Jonathan right here in the H&N Digital Center. We got to get started with some breaking news.
Yeah, closing arguments are underway at this hour in the trial of Stephen Brown. He's one of two suspects accused in a gruesome North Shore murder that happened in 2017. Here's what the defense and prosecution said in court just a few moments ago.
It was the defendant who was the only one who was physically powerful enough to subdue Thelma Boinville. She did not go peacefully, into that good night. She did not lay down and allow herself to be tied up. She fought back. And the only one physically capable of these two of overcoming her resistance is the defendant.
What happened inside that house? The prosecution really doesn't know what happened in that house.
Brown is on trial for the murder of Thelma Boinville, who was found dead in a North Shore home in 2017. Now, on Tuesday, Brown took the stand in his own defense, where he claimed his then-girlfriend, Haley Dandurand, killed Boinville while he stepped out of the home to keep a lookout. Prosecutors have said that Boinville walked in on Brown and Dandurand while they were burglarizing the North Shore vacation rental. They claimed the two tied Boinville up and eventually killed her with a machete and other weapons. Prosecutors also alleged the couple tied up her young daughter, Makana, who was waiting outside the home. Boinville's daughter was bound but not harmed.
Because at least now we know what happened. What would you have done without that testimony? What would we be left with? Haley's not here. Makana doesn't know what happened.
When the defendant testified before you a couple of days ago, he said that he was there to be accountable for what he did. You know what he did. It is time to hold him accountable.
While Brown is on trial now, Dandurand will have a separate trial later on. We'll continue to follow this story, bring you the very latest updates from the courtroom on your H&N digital platforms and on later editions of Hawaii News Now.
Actor Alec Baldwin is facing serious legal trouble. Prosecutors in Santa Fe announced Thursday they will file criminal charges against him and a crew member in connection with the fatal 2021 shooting of a cinematographer on the set of the unfinished film Rust. Baldwin was holding the gun that went off during a rehearsal. Michael George reports from New York.
Alec Baldwin's lawyer says they'll fight and they'll win after the Santa Fe district attorney announced involuntary manslaughter charges against the actor for the 2021 shooting death of cinematographer Halyna Hutchins on the set of the Western film Rust.
What we're talking about here is not an intentional killing. We're talking about a potentially lawful act that you engaged in, but you were criminally negligent.
Movie armorer Hannah Gutierrez-Reed will also be charged. The district attorney released a statement saying, quote, if any one of these three people, Baldwin, Gutierrez-Reed, or assistant director David Halls, had done their job, Halyna Hutchins would be alive today. It's that simple. The evidence clearly shows a pattern of criminal disregard for safety on the Rust film set. Prosecutors reached a plea deal with Halls for negligent use of a deadly weapon.
This is both surprising and not. A number of criminal defense attorneys were saying not only is there a lack of intent here, but we're not sure that we see that level of criminal negligence. On the other hand, what we saw from the prosecutor, I think, is that this was being planned for a while.
During an October 2021 rehearsal, Baldwin was holding the prop gun when it discharged a round, killing Hutchins and injuring director Joel Souza. In a statement, the actor's attorney called the charges a terrible miscarriage of justice, saying Mr. Baldwin had no reason to believe there was a live bullet in the gun or anywhere on the movie set. Gutierrez-Reed also denies any wrongdoing. Prosecutors say they'll formally file charges by the end of the month. Michael George, CBS News, New York.
All right, let's talk more about that big surf on the way in. We're bringing in Guy Hoggy from the First Alert Weather Team. Guy, what is the latest?
Okay, we've been tracking this big swell due in this weekend, specifically Saturday night into Sunday. So we do have swells before that, right? But Saturday night into Sunday, that's when that swell, there it is right there, will start in on Kauai. So this is Saturday night. It's going to move down the island chain and peak on Sunday. And we're talking about really big waves, high surf warning level waves, probably in excess of 30 feet for some areas, going to affect north and west shores across the state. Looks like Sunday is going to be the peak. It's going to be big all day long, and it's going to be big on Monday as well, but it's going to start to degrade in size. Now, the good thing is for those big wave surfers, the winds are going to be favorable. They're expected to be favorable. There are no guarantees with weather and their forecast models, but it looks like things will be shaping up quite nicely for those big wave riders Sunday and into Monday.
All right, and the big news this morning, the Eddy is on. What do you know about that?
Well, Clyde Eichau talked to us this morning, right? And he confirmed that he's got a green light for Sunday. But you really don't know what's going to happen until Sunday morning. When you get to the beach, you do the eyeball test, right? You look at the models, you look at the buoys, and they all tell you what's happening over the last couple of hours. So it looks really, really good. The best shot for the Eddy to run since 2016.
Yeah, we were so close earlier this year, right?
Yeah.
But then it was those winds that were the concern.
It was the winds. And you see, actually, the winds didn't turn out to be that much of a factor that day. So like I said, you got to do the eyeball test, get there early. He's going to check it out, look at the ocean, feel the winds, get a look at the weather forecast, what to expect for that day. And if things are lining up, then they're going to send people out, and then they're going to be judged on their waves and crown a winner later in the day.
And for those of our viewers that don't know, give us some recap of what the Eddy is all about.
Okay, so it's named in honor of Eddie Aikau, famed North Shore lifeguard, waterman, Hokulea crew member. He was the first lifeguard ever at Waimea Bay. Rescued countless number of people, of swimmers in distress, saved so many lives, and he never kept a log because it was too humbug for him, right? Mm-hmm. So he got this legendary reputation of also being one of the best big wave riders in history, Waimea Bay being his beloved spot. Right? In 1978, on the first voyage of Hokulea overturned in the Molokai Channel, flipped over in stormy conditions. Everybody's in the water, the boat's upside down. He decides to grab his surfboard and go paddle to what he thinks is Molokai to go to rescue his crew, which eventually were rescued later in the morning when they were seen, and Eddie was never seen again. So a legendary status, right? For a famed waterman, dedicated his life to saving people, and ironically, he himself died in the ocean.
And talk about what happens when the Eddy is on. It's not an annual thing. The conditions have to be just right, so it makes it extra special.
Exactly. Now, this contest, believe it or not, started out at Sunset Beach.
Oh, I didn't
Ran
know
it
that.
there for a couple years. And then George Downing, one of the founders of the contest, said, you know what, we got to move this to Waimea Bay. I know it's fickle. I know it can't run every year because Waimea Bay sometimes isn't good the whole season. But he said, we got to do this for Eddie. And he had the bravado, he had the courage, and he had the moxie to say, some years we're not going to run it. We're still going to hold the contest per se as an honor to Eddie and remember his memory and to keep in mind that all the things that he's done. The contest is just secondary. But the contest has become the premier biggie wave event in all of the surf community and known for a while. And like I said, whoever wins it, has a big, a big banner for the rest of the year and until the next champion is crowned.
And you're our First Alert weather team member, but we have to give a first alert to something else too, the traffic when the eddy is on. It can back up, so plan accordingly, right?
It will back up.
Yeah.
Even the last time when Clyde called it and it was called off the day before, that next day when he actually said it was going to be, traffic was nuts already.
People still showed up. I saw your live shot, yeah.
People still show up, they don't get the word, and they make plans and they go out there to Waimea Bay, which is basically a 2-lane road, which already gets busy just on a normal, beautiful day.
Small parking lot. Don't count on parking there.
Oh,
that's
you
for
will
sure.
not park
No,
there.
no.
You will not park there. And prior to that, they will set up barricades along the road to restrict parking around Waimea Bay to make it safer for the people walking into the bay. The conservative estimates are 25 to 30,000 people showing up in person there at the bay. Now, also, the challenge will be facilities, right? Because this is the first time since Quicksilver gave the contest back to Clyde that Clyde's going to run the contest. So we're talking about, having him to take over this beast of a contest. We're talking about having to accommodate 25 to 30,000 people. You're talking about food, water, increased porta potties that aren't there. I mean, he's got to make all those plans to accommodate that many people. So regardless of that, traffic's going to be bad. And that many humans together, don't expect your cell phone to work very well either.
True, yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what is the good thing? The vibe, right? It's going to be awesome.
Yeah. The vibe is going to be incredible if it goes. To watch the best of the best guys in the world challenge one of the most challenging waves in the world, Waimea Bay, it will be stunning. Every ride is going to be memorable. Every ride is going to be life-threatening. And to see those guys challenge those waves in honor of Eddie Aikau is something that you can feel. It's a palpable, tangible emotion that you get on the beach.
All right, Guy, one more thing while we got you here. Going to take a quick peek outside and yuck.
Yeah.
What's the fog going to be like? Any chance it's going to clear out by the weekend?
That's the even more amazing thing. On Sunday, when the contest is called on, we're expecting the trade winds to come back, which means great surf conditions for the Waimea Bay and also better air quality. Should kick out all this yucky fog. We won't look like Shanghai anymore.
Yeah, thank goodness. Guy Huggy, thank you so much for your insight.
No problem.
Let's toss it back over to Dylan with more news.
The U.S. has now hit its debt ceiling, and that means the clock is ticking for Congress to prevent a financial meltdown. Karen Kaifa is in Washington with a look at where things stand and the potential economic fallout. Karen?
Well, Dylan, you want to view today's deadline as more of the starting blocks for what is expected to be a marathon conversation here in Washington about government debts and also government spending. And if Congress fails to act, it could push the U.S. into some pretty tricky economic territory.
Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said Thursday the U.S. hit the $31.4 trillion borrowing cap set by Congress. And while the Treasury Department will take measures to keep payments going on America's debt until June 5th, it steps up the pressure on Congress to come to an agreement or risk an unprecedented default.
This is about economic stability versus economic chaos.
With the potential for U.S. economic catastrophe, raising the debt ceiling has historically been a routine and bipartisan act. Congress most recently did it just over 1 year ago. But the dynamics of the new House Republican majority could prompt a drawn-out battle this round after Kevin McCarthy made concessions during his contentious speaker's election to hardline members of his party who want to use the debt ceiling as a bargaining chip in a debate over cutting future government spending.
Let's start paying this debt off.
Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell said he expects the White House will have to get involved in the discussions.
We'll end up in some kind of negotiation with the administration over what are the circumstances or conditions under which the debt ceiling be raised.
Potential consequences of a long debt ceiling standoff range from market turmoil, crashing Americans' retirement accounts, to the government being forced to prioritize federal payments, deciding which will come first among Social Security, federal salaries, and other payments.
And the U.S. economy doesn't need more uncertainty right now. It is already dealing with lingering high inflation and the Federal Reserve hiking interest rates to try to curb it. The last time a debt ceiling crisis took the U.S. to the brink of default was back in 2011. It wreaked havoc with global markets and also resulted in the first downgrade in U.S. credit in the nation's history. Dylan?
Karen, thank you so much for that report. In addition to that high inflation, how is there are also a number of economic factors playing in here that are making investors nervous? My question to you is, how is Wall Street viewing this news today?
Well, Wall Street kind of shook today off. The markets were down, but not by much. They were more focused on that inflation question and the Federal Reserve. We got some new jobless claims numbers today that show that the job market still remains strong. And how does that play into the inflation question and where the U.S. economy heads from here? So they are not panicking just yet. But if Washington starts to take their time with this, if it looks like it is going to be a long, protracted battle, a lot of these investors remember very keenly what happened back in 2011 when the U.S. went all the way up against that deadline and almost pushed into default. It had an impact on the markets here in the U.S., and that, of course, shakes consumer confidence, and it also had an impact on the U.S. credit rating. And when the U.S. overall credit rating goes down, that can make it more expensive for borrowers to borrow money, regular consumers. So it is a wide-ranging effect. Even if the U.S. doesn't go all the way into default, just the idea of it can start the economy to rattle. And again, Dylan, that is not something that investors or really anyone else wants to see, especially when there has been talk about the idea of the U.S. potentially tipping into a recession this year.
Yeah, and let's actually talk about those consumers. Break it down for us further. The everyday people at home, what should the consumers know if this debate drags on, and what kind of specific impacts can we expect to see on household finances?
Well, that is the key, Dylan, if this debate drags on. Now, if Congress comes to the table tomorrow and says, hey, we have a deal, which is highly unlikely, by the way, then the average U.S. consumer won't notice anything at all. Again, Congresses have done this on a bipartisan basis pretty routinely, raising the debt ceiling, and America has its bills covered. But if this does start to drag on, again, it's not even the actual default that can wreak havoc. It's also the idea of the default. It sends kind of this effect into the markets and also among consumers about the stability of the U.S. economy, which, again, is something that the U.S. economy does not need another injection of instability right now. For the average consumer, if we start to push up against that and the Treasury Department decides they need to make other decisions about prioritizing which bills to pay to cover the nation's debt, that's when households could notice. The Treasury Department might have to make decisions about paying out Social Security benefits or Medicare or veterans payments. Again, this is very far down the line. If we bump up against that absolute deadline that the Treasury Department has said will probably come up in June. But again, it's something to keep in the back of your mind, planning, and also the uncertainty with the markets. The markets will get very rattled if we push up against that default. It could wreak havoc with your investment accounts, for example. So those are the kinds of things that consumers and households would notice. But again, we're probably a good ways away from that just now.
Yeah, our Congress has a lot of tough decisions to make in the upcoming days. Karen Kaifa in Washington, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, internet fans. Who's hungry? Because we got some stuff to talk about right now. And a lot of people love Taco Bell stories, and they're bringing something back.
Chicken wings.
Chicken wings, yeah. I never even knew they had chicken wings, to be quite honest, but they are making a comeback. According to CNN, these chicken wings, they're coated with queso seasoning and come with dipping sauce. Apparently, they were a fan favorite, and when they were last time offered as a limited time, you can get an order of them with those famed Mexican pizzas, yeah, as part of Taco Bell's ultimate game day box. It also comes with 4 crunchy tacos. Yum. I'm a Taco Bell fan, I gotta say. Never does me wrong. Good stuff. Good price.
I'll be
Love
honest,
it.
I barely go there. I barely go there. But
we got a brand new one right down the street.
Yes, I noticed the lines for the Mexican pizza. People were backing up onto the road, causing traffic. Like, people go mad for these fast food
I don't know
things.
if the lines are going to be as intense for the chicken wings because,
We'll see.
I mean, are they known for chicken wings?
I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
All right, you had a big interview.
Yes, I spoke with yesterday the wonderful Sasha Colby, who is proudly representing Hawaii on season 15 of RuPaul's Drag Race. She is making waves as the first Native Hawaiian cast on the show. Here's her story. From the beautiful shores of Waimanalo to the biggest stage in the world for drag,
Strap in, honey. Sasha Colby is a legend.
Sasha Colby is an island woman at heart.
Favorite traditional Hawaiian, lau lau, poi, lomi salmon. Straight up. Best favorite snack is fulan poki.
the spicy ahi.
Colby now lives in LA, selling out large venues and nightclubs whenever she takes the stage. In 2012, she won an elite pageant, Miss Continental, and is also the first Native Hawaiian to be cast on the popular reality TV competition, RuPaul's Drag Race.
It's now on MTV.
Tell me, what has this experience been like so far?
Oh, so far, it's only the second week and it's insane already. You kind of are thrusted into this instant recognition and like fame that's really, really quick on social media. It's a whirlwind, I must say.
What have you discovered about yourself in the process of all of this?
There's a lot of things that you realize that you didn't know you could do on the show physically, but then realizing that there's a level of vulnerability that you have to show and release. It's cathartic to be on the show and to kind of present your trauma and your life to everyone. It's wild when you think you're just going to go into the show and you're going for a competition. And then you realize that there's so many layers to this show. It's one, a competition, but also a show. So there's a lot of exploring of yourself, and I feel like every challenge kind of represents something that you'll need later on in life as a drag queen. So it's like going to a university. It's like gonna go, and now you're like taking your exams, you know?
As the youngest of 7, she says her journey has been a mixture of luck and the right timing. She's using her current platform to highlight the fight for trans equality.
To have this politicized all the time is so hard when you're just trying to be an actual trans person walking through life. Not trying to, force your beliefs or looks or anything on anyone, just wanting to live your life how you want to.
What's your message directly to the critics of drag as a whole? I mean, we've seen a lot of people who don't understand it, essentially, and that sparks fear in some people.
At the end of the day, drag is an art form. Drag is an outlet to create. And like any other art, whether it's sculptures or music or, high art, it's subjective. And you will like certain art and you will not. And I think once we really honor what it's here to do is to be a vessel to create and to work through trauma, or to unite people in a common way of thinking or looking at something differently. That's what drag does. And it's also a great mirror on pop culture. And so I think that's what a lot of drag queens do. We do satires on pop culture and things that are affecting maybe queer culture. And sometimes people don't want to be shown that, like people who are closed-minded. You can't help but feel a certain type of way when we are reflecting how you are treating us.
We want to know from you, what is your message to either small town queens like us here in Hawaii to prove that you can make it, or first timers just starting in drag? What's your message to them?
Well, I got a lot of kids and a lot of kids that want to jump into drag, so I'm going to tell you all what I tell my kids is, if you want to do drag, do it. There's no better way to figure out who you are than trial and error. And it's a beautiful thing if you really want to go into like creating who you are. You have to like be open to show the growing process. Yeah,
RuPaul's Drag Race airs on MTV Friday nights, I believe. You can root on Sasha there. That's going to do it for This Is Now. If you want to see more of that interview, just head to your H&N digital platforms. We have a story posted there as well. Much more news to come throughout the day.